My name is Jason Villalba, your Texas House of Representatives member from District 114.
Friends in the community and make sure they understand that we represent the kinds of issues and philosophies that are important to them. We care about family, we care about people, we care about small business, and we want to make sure that the government stays out of their lives. Let's talk about that. I mean, that's the argument, right? Policy versus messaging. I would argue that our policies are better for the Hispanic community. I think we are doing a better job of reaching the Hispanics and talking about how our ideas and our philosophies can better enable Hispanics to be able to educate their children in schools. I do think there's a real chance. We're working on this. We recognize there's an uphill climb here, but I think if you look historically at what we've done, we did well with George W. Bush in the governor's office. When he ran for president, he got over 44% of the vote, so we know it's possible to reach my brothers and sisters. I recognize that there's rhetoric out there in TV and radio that suggests that we have some problems with reaching our Hispanic brothers and sisters, but I think if you look closely at what we represent, we are the party that believes in less regulation. We are the party that protects the culture of life. You know, many of my Hispanic friends and relatives are strongly pro-life. This is an issue that we represent. I think we if you ask Hispanics, and I see you have a Pew poll over here, about what issues are important to them, they mention immigration down the list. I mean, it's education, it's the economy. So merely to use this issue as a divisive wedge in the community, I think is one of the methods that they've used to try to push us away. But really, Hispanics care about issues that we care about. Now, we are going to find a solution. Remember that all past efforts on immigration reform have been led by Republicans. It's our party that's trying to do this. The Gang of Eight is comprised and led by Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, a Hispanic who cares deeply about this issue. The last immigration reform we had in 1986, Ronald Reagan. The last try after that, George W. Bush. Than that, I think we're right on message. We're right on philosophy. We understand this community better than our friends do, and I think we're going to reach them ultimately, as proved by George W. Bush.
Where's the disconnect here?
Well, I believe we are making inroads. I mean, look at me. I'm a Hispanic Republican. I just won elected office in an Anglo district. So people look at me and they say, well, he's a qualified candidate. It just so happens that he happens to be Hispanic. But I think if there are more people out there who are like me, people of color, Hispanics or African Americans or Asians, then the people that are voting can look to that individual and say, look, this person came from my background. This person shares my philosophy, and I'm going to vote. No question. And again, the Democrats with Battleground Texas have focused on this, and you know, we ignore their efforts at our own peril. I think it's a well-funded effort, and we have to be strong in the face of that, but we will not cede this territory. We will make sure that we fight for the voters. We will win voters one at a time by knocking on doors and engaging the community in a real and effective way.
We care about those issues that impact all Texans. So I'm focusing on public education. I'm focusing on safety in schools. I'm focusing on transportation and water and infrastructure and electricity. Right. Real bread and butter issues for the district. I know that's not terribly sexy, but I can tell you from the people that I represent, that's what they care about most, and that's what we're going to focus on. $3.7 billion in infrastructure. Now, how much that goes to water or transportation, we don't know the breakdown yet, but the fact that the governor is so clearly focusing on looking to the rainy day fund for issues like water signals to the membership and to the Senate that we are going to be addressing water in a very meaningful way this time, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to fix, or at least begin the process of fixing what is a very real crisis here in Texas with water. One of the first things I did when I decided to run for this office was decided to educate myself personally. Look, I understand public education. I'm a product of the public schools here in Texas. My daughter, Sophia, is going to start at a DISD public school in the fall. But I also knew there was a lot of things I didn't understand about education, things I didn't know about it, and so I spent time with experts, people much smarter than me. The first thing I learned was that we need to have more local control of our schools. Look, bureaucrats like me, legislators like me, have no business telling folks in other districts how they need to run their school systems. We need to have those kinds of decisions made here in the district. We need to make sure we have transparency in our educational system. We need to make sure that our teachers and our administrators are compensated and promoted based on the performance of the students and not necessarily on their seniority. That's something that's different than what we have. We need to make sure we have expanded charter school systems. Now, I know there are some complaints about the charter school systems, but by and large, charter school systems in Texas have worked, where historically the public education system has failed. So I believe we should expand the charter school system. So those are three types of reforms that I think are important. We really wanted to understand what was important to them, and overall what we saw consistently were two issues. One, jobs in the economy. This is an economy that we have here in Texas that's stuck in neutral. It's strong vis-a-vis our other states, the other 49 states, but we still have some shortcomings. We do need to strengthen our economy, make it stronger, create more jobs.
But until we get to that point, this is a way to warn the community about people who are serial abusers, and to also, provide an element of shame for these individuals who perpetrate these kinds of crimes.
The first actual proposal comes from North Texas State Rep. Jason Villalba. The Protection of Texas Children Act would allow each school to appoint one school marshal, a faculty member licensed and specially trained to carry a concealed handgun in the classroom.
If we could provide uniformed police officers on every campus in the district or in Texas, then I'm perfectly satisfied by that.
Villalba says many schools simply can't, and deputizing a single teacher would fill a first responder gap.
My proposal is not about expanding CHL rights. My proposal is about expanding law enforcement. I dropped her off that morning. I had heard that story, and I immediately thought of her safety and security.
Republican State Representative Jason Villalba of Dallas says after the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting, he decided to file a bill that would allow schools to appoint school marshals for emergency situations.
It's different than teacher carry because this individual who's serving as a school marshal would not have a weapon on their person at all moments in time. They would have a weapon at their disposal under lock and key within their immediate reach.
The decision came after the representative brainstormed with school administrators and parents in his district.
They're uncomfortable with having CHL carry around children for a number of reasons, and that's debatable, and that's controversial, but that's why there's an objection. So what we thought was we would craft a narrow, we have active shooter training, we have psychological profiling and evaluation, we have a number of different safeguards to make sure that these individuals who serve in this role are licensed and have the same kinds of training that you would have if you're undergoing a police academy training.
Well, schools would be limited to one marshal for every 400 students. Any weapon would have to remain under lock and key, but within immediate reach. This is a covert position. Only school administrators and law enforcement would actually know the identity of each marshal.
What we're trying to do here is to create that firewall, the break glass in case of emergency possibility for existing.
Texas House approved more than a dozen gun-related bills. The biggest, the so-called school marshal bill, filed by freshman Republican Jason Villalba of Dallas.
I have two little ones in public schools in Dallas. I drafted this bill the day after Newtown because of them. I wanted to find protections for them that I thought were able to actually prevent this kind of crime, but also with the understanding that I know parents have concerns. I think we've done that.
The bill would allow schools to appoint employees, which could include teachers, as undercover school marshals. They receive law enforcement training and be certified to keep a gun at school in order to respond to an attack on campus.
This is not about arming teachers. This is about bringing more law enforcement into the classroom.
Rigorous training.
Rigorous training. So we're not talking about 8 hours of training, which is what is required under current CHL standards. We're talking about 80 hours of training.
10 times.
10 times.
This bill is about expanding law enforcement. We're not talking about providing teachers with the ability under CHL standards to carry weapons. We're talking about expanding the requirements for anyone within the school system who may be a faculty administrator, a teacher, otherwise, to carry weapons after going through a very rigorous training from law enforcement and making sure that they have the requisite qualifications to be able to carry a weapon in this most dire of situation. We're not talking about somebody who's going to walk the halls as a monitor. We're talking about someone who is only going to be able to utilize lethal force in the face of an active emergency situation like we saw last time. This is the break glass in case of an emergency response. This is not a typical teachers can carry weapons.
Okay, because that's how this has been carried. I think most people may have heard this on the radio, on television, all day long. That's what they've been thinking about. They've been hearing that you're essentially saying that you want a teacher in every school to be carrying one, and every school to be carrying one. That is not the case with what you're talking about.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, we just make very clear. We've talked to a number of teachers and administrators and principals and law enforcement officials, and we recognize there's great concern about placing weapons in the classroom. We're not talking about that. We're talking about expanding law enforcement officers, essentially deputizing members of the school to be able to act only in an emergency scenario, not to carry weapons just because they have a CHL, but only in that direct, dire situation where we're at risk for losing human life.
So would a teacher have a weapon?
Only if they've gone through the rigorous training that we would provide. This is not a CHL standard. This is a 2, 3, 4, 5-day course where they're going to get the kind of training you would if you were a federal air marshal.
I'm Jason Villalba, your Texas House of Representatives member from District 114. Thank you.